Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd just like to call the public hearing to order at 6:30 PM, Thursday, February 27th, and acknowledge that we're meeting on the shared traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, represented by the Kisepsum and Songhees nations. Item 2, just an opening statement. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to allow any person who believes their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw be given an opportunity to be heard or present written submissions. Council's role at this public hearing is to listen to the public, and we will not answer questions or debate proposals or proposed bylaws except to provide clarification. No one will be discouraged from making their views known. However, it is important that you restrict your remarks to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. To conduct this process to be fair and equitable, the following will apply. No submissions in any, this is after the public hearing, that is. No submissions in any form from the public or the applicant regarding the amendment will be heard or received, and there will be no other opportunities to speak to the bylaw. And at this point in time, I'll ask our corporate officer, Marcy, to provide instructions with regards to public participation. Marcy.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. So the following are the public participation instructions for tonight's meeting. The electronic participation instructions are up on the screen for those who would like to join the meeting remotely. If you are joining the public hearing by phone, you will be identified by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If you are coming in on the Zoom app, we will identify you by the name you have come in with. Those attending electronically who wish to be put into the queue to speak, please raise your virtual hand through the Zoom app or press star 9 if you're attending by phone. The following rules will apply during public input. No sound recordings or presentations will be permitted. Those in attendance will refrain from applause or other expressions of emotion, whether in favor of or opposition to the application. Inappropriate language, outbursts, or criticisms aimed at individuals or groups will not be permitted. A speaker will not debate a point of view with another speaker, but will seek clarification through the chair. There will be 3 opportunities to speak at each item. At each opportunity, you will be provided 5 minutes. A timer will go off when your time is up, and we will move on to the next speaker. Once everyone has had the chance to speak for the first time, a second and a third opportunity will be provided. We ask those who speak to provide their name and address and indicate whether you are in favor or in oppose of the proposed amendment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. If I could ask Yasmin Hernandez, our Director of Development Services, to introduce our speaker first, to introduce the bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. Tonight, Desiree Givens, Planner with Development Services, will be introducing Bylaw 1710.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Mayor. So the proposed bylaw request is to amend sections 18, 19, and 20 and the glossary of the official community plan to support updates to the city's environmental development permit guidelines. The bylaw has been amended since the previous public hearing, which was held on January 25th, 2024. The bylaw amendment includes changes to respond to the input that was received from this previous public hearing, as well as through consultation that was held between March and November 2024. The notification period for this public hearing was from February 19th until today. During this time, the public hearing binder was available digitally on the website, as well as available to review at the city's front counter. Notices were placed in the Goldstream Gazette on February 19th and February 26th. A notice was also published in the city's website on February 19th. To date, the city has received 2 responses, written responses. This presentation is intended to provide an update on the consultation for the bylaw. This item was first introduced in December 2023 after staff became aware of the city's guidelines for riparian areas needed updating to respond to changes to provincial legislation that was introduced in 2019 after the city had last updated its OCP and environmental guidelines in 2018. To help advise staff, the city hired a qualified environmental professional to review the current guidelines and recommend updates. The goal was to make sure that the city's guidelines were easier to understand, more consistent with the other city policies, and most importantly, in line with latest changes to provincial legislation. After receiving the QEP's recommendations, staff drafted a new bylaw to make those changes. This bylaw was presented to Planning and Land Use Committee and Council last winter, and the public hearing was held in January 2024. During the public hearing, we received feedback that prompted us to hit pause and consult with a wider group of professionals before moving forward. Both the city's Environment and Planning and Land Use Committees were involved in the review process, and in March 2024, the city launched a survey to gather feedback on the proposed bylaw. This survey was distributed to a variety of professionals, including all QEPs in the region and a list of developers, and as well as Ms. Kieran, the professor of environmental law and studies at the University of Victoria, at the request of the Environment Committee. Details of the responses are summarized in Appendix 6 of the staff report that went to both committees. And over the summer 2024, we worked with the QEP to address concerns that were raised during that consultation period and during the previous public hearing, before once again distributing the revised bylaw for review by QEPs in October 2024. We also held a workshop with interested QEPs to discuss the remaining concerns in November 2024. The full list of responses and summary of changes are outlined in the staff reports that went to the committees on November 18th and December 3rd of last year. So staff are here tonight to hear from the public and listen to public feedback, and we will be ready to respond to the comments and concerns that we hear tonight in a report to council prior to third reading of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Desiree. So for the first time, I'm going to call upon the public to provide their input on the proposed bylaw. And if you could just identify your name and your address, or if you don't want to give your address publicly, you can hand it to the clerks. Okay.
Sorry. My name is Corey Barraclaw. I'm a QEP that's done a fair bit of work in the city of Colwood over the years. And my address is actually 390 7th Avenue, Kimberley. I work in Victoria and live between here and the Kootenays. But my interest is working as a QEP in the city of Colwood. So first of all, I would just like to express my thanks to staff and council for extending the time that it took to actually consider this bylaw. When it first came forward over a year ago now, I think a number of us had a serious number of concerns, but staff have made very good efforts toward alleviating those concerns, and I really do appreciate that, because oftentimes the concerns of the professionals are ignored, and I think in this case they made every effort that they could to consult, which was wonderful. I do still have a couple of outstanding queries, really. I have sent them in a brief email just this afternoon, or just before noon, actually. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time I wish to go through in detail and provide more fulsome comments. But I guess the first is that there's some, at the previous public hearing, I spoke to the fact that there's a need for fencing of streams for safety purposes. And unfortunately, the riparian areas protection regulation is somewhat unwieldy with regard to some of these nuances. So essentially it defines any soil disturbance as development. And if I was a homeowner with young children living next to a creek and I was told that I couldn't put a fence along the stream because it was development and the province wouldn't allow for that, I think I'd be a little concerned. So while I do respect the consulting QEP's opinion that development does include fences, indeed that is correct. But as a municipality, I would suggest that you might want to go back to the province and say, you know, we have reason why we need to fence streams. So can we please work on that together to improve that regulation? The way around that may in fact be as suggested by the consulting QEP, which is to predetermine SPIAs for the creeks in Colwood. And Colwood doesn't have a whole ton of little tributaries. I mean, we've essentially got Colwood Creek, Millstream Creek, and Latoria Creek with a few other small tributaries. So it's not a vastly onerous job to predetermine those SPIAs. And that would mean that reports are not meant to be sent for every single lot to the province every single time. And it does give the municipality a little bit more latitude, which is what, in fact, what Saanich does. And in fact, Langford also has a fence exemption, whether or not that's strictly in compliance. It's the practical way that it works. The other thing that I would just like to draw your attention to is section 20A1, section S. And that's regarding restoration of riparian areas that have been disturbed. So this is relative to what we call the SPIA, or the Streamside Protection and Enhancement Area. And currently it states, on greenfield sites, riparian vegetation should be maintained where intact, of course, or restored where disturbed or where invasive species have established. As a biologist, I wholly support restoring riparian areas and making sure that they're healthy and functional. My challenge is who determines disturbed? And is that the QEP? Because this provision doesn't speak specifically to QEP's opinion. And the other is where invasive plants have established. The challenge is if I'm a single family lot and I've got invasive species and my neighbors have invasive species, and perhaps there's a park across the street with or across the creek with invasive species, trying to control them just on a single lot is super difficult and very expensive. And so I'm hoping that we could amend that slightly just to include, again, a recommendation from a QEP, because I think the QEPs have a much better sense of what's feasible and what's expensive, what's actually going to be successful, and or to encourage neighborhoods or regions to cooperate, because that's really the trick to controlling invasive species. Doing it on individual, it's different for large developments, certainly, but for single family homeowners, it's super challenging. So I would just request that maybe that have another look. But overall, I think I'm in support of the amendments. I certainly am pleased to have been able to participate in the process, and I commend council for taking the extra time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
On that guy, I was gonna push that one, okay? This is a letter I'm gonna read is from Karen Woodland, 524 Elevation Point Terrace, because she didn't submit it to make it part of the public record. So I would like to read it. Dear Mayor and Council, apologies for this late submission. I am unable to attend tonight's public hearing, but did want to comment. Many of us live here because we appreciate the rich ecological diversity of the area and believe we have elected representatives committed to protecting it. I urge you to give the amendments to the EDPA the care, attention, and scrutiny they require. For instance, do these amendments ensure detailed mapping of EDPA areas? Are there a clear definition of what constitutes development, i.e., could it be a playground or a fence? Is there a recognition not only of areas that are environmentally sensitive, e.g. creeks, peat bogs, and trees, but of overall ecosystem health, as outlined in the Colwood Climate Action Plan? This increasingly important feature is often overlooked. If you find the recommendations lacking, please delay your decision and seek assistance from a QAP on best practices. It would be unfortunate if Colwood ended up with weaker environmental protection than what is assured under provincial guidelines. I ask you to give this critical subject the due diligence it deserves and ask your decision tonight. Well, it isn't yours. I'm sorry, I should read. Your decision tonight could irrevocably change the character of our beautiful community. Thank you, Karen Woodland.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, citizens. My name is Patrick Lucy. I'm also a qualified professional biologist. I also live in the East Kootenays, but I work here. Just thinking about a single comment. 20A1, Riparian Area Guidelines, Section B. I will read it out. The city may request a third-party peer review or audit of an assessment report prepared under Section 20A1A at the expense of the applicant to confirm the recommendations in the report. As a professional, I feel quite concerned that this may be encroaching into areas of ethics. So anytime that I question as a professional another professional's report, I have an obligation under our ethical guidelines to first discuss my concerns with that other professional. Try to understand on both our parts why there's a concern. But for the city to arbitrarily decide they're going to review somebody's report and charge the homeowner for that, at a minimum, there should be very clear guidelines about what would constitute the reason for asking for an audit. Because it strikes me that the person that's asking for it is another professional. And that automatically means that we're both operating under professional ethical constraints. So the issue of ordering an audit surely must be after discussions with the other professional about why somebody thinks an audit would be required. It almost always means somebody thinks there's something wrong with that report. So if the city is ordering it, on what basis are they qualified to ask for an audit if they're not a qualified professional in that field? It's something I think needs to be given very serious consideration. And I would like to reiterate what my colleague Corey said. Thank you very much for taking the time to go through a number of different iterations of these reviews. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next speaker, please. Map again. Oh, great.
Hi, my name is Kathy Elder. I live at 560 Bunker Road. I am just a concerned citizen. I definitely support development and I understand the need for more housing. But I also have concerns when we do development near sensitive ecosystems. And I think it's really important that we have best practices developed with our own fully qualified environmental professionals. And that if we are going to do development near sensitive ecosystems, that we do so kind of as a last resort and only when needed and with extreme caution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, number 2. Okay, I'll second, I guess. Oh, sorry. I thought no one was speaking except me. His first time. People, right? Sorry. Yeah, is this your first time then, Tim, right? You were speaking on behalf of Miss Woodland, I think, before? I did. Okay, so this is your first time. I was good to use that one.
I'm asking council to respect the overwhelming concern of the majority of residents, namely the protection of the environment and preserving ever-diminishing green spaces, wildlife corridors, and the natural environment. Previous council approved Royal Bay and Royal Beach with the tripling of density that was originally proposed when Colwood was allocated capacity in the CRD treatment sewage plant. This council is moving to remove environmental protection despite it being the most significant concern of residents. Please sideline this bylaw until council has qualified staff to assess environmental concerns. Now staff reports to developers and developers provide lip service to residents. And with due respect to the previous speaker, I have read different reports of Colwood Creek, and I know that he doesn't believe there's any fish in. So there's one reason right there, because that's what riparian areas are all about, fish. So I have, can't put them up here, but it's in my email. I'll explain it. 2016, all of South Colwood was in an environmental development permit area. And then staff took the opportunity with the drawing of a new map to, no. So I'm just saying it was all in. That's page 1. Page 2 is a drawing of the actual riparian areas of this, of Latoria Creek that are going to be severely impacted. And after someone that thinks there's no fish has a chance at it, those little green lines won't be much wider than the blue ones, as happened on the first development, 3580 Wishart Road, where 15,000 cubic meter, 15,000 cubic meters of a fill has been dumped on a 1 acre parcel. So that was back when they had the riparian. Then I get to my hard to find a proper topographical map, and this is the best one I could find. So if you, at least you can blow it up and look at it, and it makes sense, because the importance of it is, if you look at the picture, that pond that's on the back, the bottom of this map on the left-hand side is floodplain. And this has been established by 2 floodplain reports. They've put enough fill on 3580, but the rest of them are still floodplains. And dumping the fill on 3580 has done nothing to improve that floodplain. And so I'm not sure why that our neighborhood was removed from the hillside protection, just singled right out, as I show in my picture, slashed out, and I don't have, I can't identify figure 19, natural hazards. And then we go to this one here, which doesn't have a date, and they didn't, it's slashed out again. So it used to go down Wishart Road, and if you look at the topographical map, you'll see that it's all sloped down Wishart Road. Pretty obvious, the slope on Wishart Road when you're heading down towards Latoria. If that isn't hillside. So I don't understand, but it certainly helped push forward 3580. And I'm concerned that this will endeavor to do very much damage to Latoria Creek, where the road is impossible to improve and development does not need to take place. It's a green space. It could remain a green space. It could have a few more houses on it.
Tim, because there's not a lot of speakers, I'll let you continue, please. Yeah, you got to push it back on again.
There could be, I look at Latoria Road as 2 different ends. You have the floodplain end, and you have whatever you want to call that big circle of destruction at the other end. We could all have names for it. None of them are going to be good. $8.4 million without any public discussion. How did that happen? So you're supposed to take staff's word that they can build a road down Latoria, no problem. Except if you look at the reports, they have to do completely weird stuff to be able to support that load. So it's a bad, bad thing to touch that intersection. It's gonna be hard enough to get a left turning lane in. And this development is not required. It's not gonna help anyone, and it's certainly gonna destroy the environment. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Anybody else want to speak for the first time? Okay, then I'll call the question the second time. Does anyone want to speak a second time? There's no one online, correct? Okay.
Yeah. Hello. I can see this as a done deal, but I'll still share my concerns because to me, it's important that it becomes part of the public record. I'm talking about the bylaws. It's written called Appendix 8. And in Appendix 8, 3.3, revising figure 18, it says updating the figure legend by replacing riparian areas with riparian mapped, which means developers that don't know there's any fish there are going to decide they can build an 8-story apartment right next to a creek and nothing will happen. So this is a developer-driven agenda to bypass provincial riparian protection of Latoria Creek to build inappropriate, auto-dependent, oversized apartment buildings in a floodplain. Page 7, under additional professional reports may be requested by the city such as, and I've highlighted a technical memo prepared by a qualified professional, e.g. hydrologist, civil engineer, geotechnical engineer, demonstrating that the development footprint complies with the flood construction level and applicable guidelines for natural hazards. So working with staff over a period of, well, before Christmas, it's been pretty, no, I don't know, way more than that. And finally having to file a FOI request to find out any records about that lot and how everything came to be on it. And it established in the report that I had that the flood construction level was 63.8 meters. Well, Latoria Road is at 62 meters. So the only thing that's controlling the flood level is how high it is on the road before it goes into the woods. From the last rain event, you can see that the far side of the Latoria Road culvert is boiling over already. Before any development and any more of that peat is destroyed and any capacity to absorb a storm is destroyed. It just can't be done. The latest one I got just tonight is now they've reduced that to 63.4 meters as a floodplain. But it starts off with, look, Victoria Creek is a watershed of 1.5 square kilometers. No, it isn't. It's like 380 hectares, 3.8 square kilometers. What are their calculations based on? They show nothing. I was giving some drawings that are so fuzzy, that not any detail, even headings can be made out on them. So what is sitting there? I have no idea. I know that the driveway next door has started to slop over. It's dropped at least a foot. The last rain event we were down there, The water went all the way up to the front of the house. The front yard was underwater. It wasn't a 200-year flood event. It was a heavy rain, the last one we had. The double culverts are at 100% capacity already without any major event. During that event, it was starting to go up the wall on the other side. And shortly after that event, the rock-lined ditch on the roadside, had to be repaired by Public Works because the top of it got washed away. That was a small rain event. But it's just ridiculous that we're talking about causing so much grief to accomplish so little. I'm out of time. Lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And for a second time, anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Lucy.
Mr. Mayor. Patrick Lucy again. I would just like to reiterate a comment that my colleague Corey Barraclough made earlier, which I believe the city is already proposing to undertake, which is to predetermine what all of the SPIA setbacks on all of the applicable watercourses in the city are, having prepared many, many, many reports under the wrapper previous to that, the RAR. This will save a great deal of time and effort on everybody's part and a lot of money, I suspect, on the part of the homeowner. So it's a common cost for everybody to support a common benefit that is only applied on specific individual properties. So if you have a property that has the potential to have a SPIA on it, and you're required to undertake that assessment, it's essentially to benefit the entire community. So if the entire community, through our taxes, your taxes, pays to do this for everybody, then it is a benefit that accrues to everybody. So I very much strongly support that. The only other municipality I'm aware that does that is Saanich. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, for the second time, anybody wish to speak? Oh, go ahead.
Hello, Corey Barraclough. I limited my comments in the previous iteration to the riparian area guidelines, but I just want to speak briefly to the marine shoreline guidelines as well. While most of our work revolves around freshwater, we do a considerable amount of work on marine shorelines. And as someone trained as a Green Shores verifier and very familiar with that process, I'm really pleased to see these updated guidelines that reflect the Green Shores principles, though maybe not explicitly, certainly follow what's outlined by Green Shores. I note that there's a 30-meter permanent buffer from the present natural boundary. And while I commend that, I think that's a great step. I do question whether or not staff have had the opportunity to assess how that will affect any individual lots along Colwood's foreshore that are presently developed, and to assess what the impact is on redevelopment. I mean, I do recognize that the foreshore is a common good that we all want to protect, and we're really only recognizing now its value to everyone with regard to things like forage fish, sea level rise, erosion protection, etc. But that firm buffer in place, while, like I say, certainly is a good idea ecologically, may have implications that may not have been thought through. They may have. I'm just not party to that, so it's just a question as to whether that's been looked at or not. And if it has, kudos. If it hasn't, maybe that's something just to have a quick look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey. And for the second time, anyone else for second time? That'll be third. I'll call you up on the third.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, moving on, then I will go to call for the third time public input. And you want to start us off, Tim?
Turned it off. Okay. Changes every time I come up. I provided a map of the riparian area of Latoria Creek along Latoria Road. If it was honored by the development, they would see that all the houses that are there now aren't built in riparian area, with the exception of the one on the road. Everyone else had to go to high ground because their house would have flooded. It's flooded before. So this thing to eliminate them in this horrendous cost for someone to put in a swing set and all this has no bearing on anything. There's an excellent environmental report. There's many excellent environmental reports done by University of Victoria showing, it's got pictures of the cutthroat trout. It's got pictures of fish all over the place. It shows the value of the ecosystem and how special it is. And to have someone just, oh, you can't question this because I'm a, whatever they're called, QEPs? Qualified. Yeah. So I think you've got to rely on someone independent, and that person should be working for the city with all the high-priced help that are around here. Why isn't someone representing the committee with the environment, which is the #1 concern of the citizens? We have so many people, but none that can just settle this, and this sort of staff incentive would not be going on. How much money has been wasted in this Latoria Road development by staff to push through something for a few developers? It's just not right. It's only to flip land, both ends of the road. The floodplain end and the other blown up end have zoning in place. They can't build. I'd say 3580 because the land isn't stable, but they won't give me that report. And the other one, it's been for sale since it was approved. So even of the developers that were pushing this through have tried to double their sales and get out early. So this is just a shell game, and the people of Colwood are the losers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak for the third time? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay, there being no further input, I will declare the public hearing closed. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you.